This is in loving memory of my brother David, loving brother, son, and uncle, and for all who loved him and made his life brighter between his birth on December 10th, 1948, and his death on June 22nd, 2019. Our mother used a Christmas card to announce his birth. I'm Noelle. That was before Tina became my nickname. Here's David with Granddaddy Martin and Granddaddy Robeson, solo, with our father and our mother. And here he is on my lap, and with our sister Dana and our cousins Tommy and Timmy. Here with our sister Missy, and here holding our sister Susie. This is David when he was 4 or 5, shortly after he started having seizures at the age of 4, sometimes 20 in an hour. That was a very frightening thing for a little boy, and something he had to live with all of his life, even after the seizures were controlled. He had side effects from the medicine and, of course, from the damage, brain damage that the seizures did. Here he is playing with Missy and Susie, hugging Missy. As a Boy Scout, our mother became an assistant den mother to give David and, of course, the Boy Scouts of America some extra support. Here he is in his early teens. Here David and I are at home in Columbia, South Carolina with Daddy, Missy, and Susie. I guess we were the only ones willing to stand up for the picture. His high school graduation. One of my favorite pictures of David, taken in 1969, David, Susie, and me. Here with Kathy and Mom a year later. With Mom. With Susie and me in the early 1970s. Solo. Looking pretty cool with the Great Escape video. In Pleasant Hill at Christmas time with Mom, Kathy, Susie, all of whom were vegetarians by that time, and Jim Chung on Thanksgiving Day around 1973, with a pipe he sometimes smoked. In 1969, holding Jonathan. A few months later, with Jonathan and me, with Mother and Robert, with Jonathan in the early 1980s. Much later, with Jonathan and me in Pleasant Hill, we're skipping a few years, and with his dad. Here's one of my favorite family photos with David, Mom, Kathy, Susie, Jonathan, and me. And here's another that includes Carl. A later one about 10 months before our mother died. And here's David with Jonathan and Susie, his niece Jamie's daughters Sammy and Ali. And then one with our nieces Jamie, Megan, and Becky, and Sammy, Ali, and Emily, Jonathan and me. Here's David's admiring gaze at niece Jamie. And here with our sister Dana, who lives outside Chicago and doesn't see David as often, so she asked, "Do you remember me?" And David said, "Yes, you never forget an old flame." That was several years ago. Dana visited him more recently. Here, nieces Becky and Megan and Becky's daughter Emily are sending David a sweet message because at that time he was too confused for their visit to be reassuring. Now I'm going to go through the pictures that remain really quickly because I want to show some of David's art and praised NIAD, the National Institute for Art and Disabilities, and the caregivers at Garfield Neurobehavioral Center who were so wonderful. Here are the Beatles, David's favorite group, until he forgot who they were. David went to NIAD, the National Institute of Art and Disabilities, for several years during the day. Maybe it was from 1999 to about 2010. And his art was featured in a couple of the NIAD newsletters in 2004 and in 2008. Three of his art teachers were Maria, Andres, and Melinda, and he really responded to them and they to him. Here David is with Susie, looking at a picture David did, his rendering of The Simpsons, which I like a lot. Here are some of his other paintings, drawings, and ceramics. He also made me a teapot, really unique, but what I cherish even more is this picture he painted of me. And then you see Kazuko Belinda with David showing some jeans that had his drawings on them. Kazuko is another wonderful person at Garfield, and those are the people I'd like to talk about next. Here you see Reiko, Bill, and Jim with David, and Channing and Sherry, two of the people who transported David to appointments with David's neurologist and showed such great kindness. Emnet, a charge nurse who watched David attentively and caringly and called me regularly. Maggie, a fairly new caregiver, kind and hardworking. And lovely Vicky, who directs art at Garfield. This is one of my favorite pictures because David and I got to connect while he was adding to a group art project that Vicky was directing. Angelus, whose name suits her so well. No one has a more demanding job than caregivers, I want to say, and they are my heroes. Angelus kept up David's spirits and her own. And then some of David's social workers in recent years, Mary, Alyssa, Brianna, Eva, always so responsive and nice, Shannon, his final social worker, who never seemed to lose her upbeat manner and warmth. Here are David and Shannon with Joan, David's regional center case manager, and Rosemary, David's wonderful Hatch worker. Hatch stands for Help Another Toward Creative Happiness. One of the things I admire about the Garfield staff is that they celebrate life and one another while brightening the lives of residents like David. They put on a really festive holiday party every December, which shows their spirit throughout the year. So I'm going to close with Christmas in June. First, Sam, the behavioral specialist. David addressed him as Daddy in his final days. The rest of the pictures speak for themselves, but I should identify Ebony, who along with Angelica was the one to greet us when we checked in for visits. Like the caregivers, they were always warm and welcoming. So she's the one in the last picture with Shannon and David. I'm so glad that they were part of David's life and part of ours. I'm also grateful that we had David for a brother. He didn't have an easy life, but I don't think he ever stopped loving us, and we will always love him. Through him and through the people we came in contact with through him, strangers sometimes as well as the caregivers and friends and family members, I find it very easy to believe what the t-shirt of a close friend urges us to believe. Believe there is good. I do. Thank you, David.